What up, what up, what up, everybody? This is the Dr. Football Ultimate Patriots Around the League podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dennis Tien, recording today remote from my real live medical office in Dedham, Massachusetts, joined by the CEO of HedgeBetter, Justin Fine, recording in Braintree at the HedgeBetter studio. We are breaking down everything around the NFL today. Justin, what is going on, my friend? How are you?
I am doing well. We got a little bit of snow today. That was kind of a nice change of pace, honestly. I haven't seen snow around here in a while.
It's been a 1,000 days since we had more than 3 inches of snow. And I think that still holds true because we've had a few dustings.
Yeah. Nothing accumulated, nothing big, but it was kind of a nice little surprise just to see a couple of flakes outside the window.
Well, this is like nice snow. It makes everything pretty. It doesn't really stick around. It's kind of fun. This is the nice snow, you know. We'll see if we make it through another winter without a huge, like, miserable storm.
I know.
Probably unlikely, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's New England. We'll see. You never know.
Exactly. All right. Well, we got a lot to talk about. We got a ton of things going on around the NFL. This is the edition of the podcast where we take a break from breaking down the Patriots in Foxborough, and we get around the NFL to the other 31 NFL franchises, and a great week of NFL football this week to summarize. So let's get right to it, Justin. I actually want to start with what I think is the top story in the NFL right now, which is the hit heard around the world on Trevor Lawrence. And not only is this an on the field hit, but it has now become a huge off the field situation with really tentacles, I would say, into all kinds of different places: player health and safety, competition, fairness in the game. And I think that's what a lot of the discussion is on. So let me start by asking you, Justin, did you see the hit? And if you did you think, what were your thoughts on it? I will just throw out there before you go that I didn't think it was quite as bad. I'm not saying it wasn't cheap. It was a cheap hit, but if you watch it in real time in full speed, I didn't think it was quite as bad as people say.
So I agree. And it's not just because I hate Trevor Lawrence. So you obviously never want to see, another player get injured like that. Right. But, look, the results may have been a little devastating. I think it looked the aftermath looked a little bad, but when you watch it, I mean, it was kind of a combination of a little bit of a late slide, plus the fact that Al-Shaair had kind of already left his feet. You know what I mean? Like it was just a weird timing type of thing. By the time I think Trevor Lawrence was giving himself up, Shaair was kind of past the point of no return. It was unfortunate, I think, the way it played out. It obviously was a little bit of, it wound up being a late hit. It looked pretty bad, but again, I actually totally agree that I don't think it's as awful as everybody's saying. I've seen worse.
I think the league has a major issue on its hands right now with this whole quarterback slide thing, because what we've seen a few times, and I think it's actually happening pretty regularly now, is that quarterbacks are exploiting this rule.
Agreed.
And I think even Drake May has done it, by the way, once or twice this year, to be fair. Mahomes does it all the times. I've seen Josh Allen do it. Kenny Pickett had the famous play where he literally started to slide and really in college.
Yeah.
I think this is a major issue because it really puts defenders in an unfair position, right? You have to tackle. It's part of the game. Contact is part of the game. This is not flag football. How can these guys play defense when you're putting them in the position you're putting them, where you really can barely hit these quarterbacks? They can drop and slide anytime, and in a split second, you can get ejected or a 15-yard penalty if your timing is just a tick off. And at the same time, a clever quarterback is going to exploit that rule and go take an extra 15 yards on you.
I agree. And I don't know if you heard Tom Brady's take in the situation. Do you hear his comments at all?
I did, and I loved it.
I loved it too. I'm totally in favor for some sort of reciprocal penalty on the offensive side on the part of the quarterback if they slide too late, or if they were to pull some sort of like bait and switch. I do think that needs to kind of be regulated a little bit. I can't say off the top of my head I know exactly how you do it, but at this point you're kind of leaving the defenders helpless. And like you said, a good quarterback will take advantage of it. And I just think it's making the game a little tough for the defense.
It really is, it really is. Now, I think that this hit, if we just like look at the on the field implications of this hit, right, and the fact that Trevor Lawrence is now on injured reserve, Justin, if we take like a 10,000 foot view, where does this leave the future of both that Jacksonville franchise and Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. And I know they just signed him to a huge contract, but he is going the wrong way. Some guys have not come back well from situations like this, and some have, like Tua, in all fairness. But what is the future of Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville right now? Am I crazy to say that I'm starting to have doubts about that?
No, I think we've doubted him the entire time he's been there. I mean, look, he does have on the health side of things. I think he has the benefit. This is probably a season-ending injury. I don't think he's planning on coming back, so he's going to get the rest of the season, all off season to recover, right? So we should be, back and fully healthy come the next NFL season. But I don't see at this point how you've seen enough from him to want to continue that investment, right? I know you committed to it financially, but what has he shown you in terms of his ability to elevate that team, in terms of his ability to be a leader, in terms of his ability to make big plays in big games at big moments? Like, he is statistically a bum. He is when you look at his numbers, right? When you look at his numbers, very pedestrian. When the eye test, he doesn't pass it for me. I just think, at a certain point, you have to cut your losses. I think he's bad for the culture of the team. I think he's bad for, obviously, the on the field gameplay. And I think the franchise is pretty crippled. I know that contract is kind of, a kind of a crippling move. They really can't do much. I actually think it's one of the worst free agent deals, or I don't know, I've ever seen. But I don't know.
Yeah, but look, just to your point, right? Like, I mean, I can think just off the top of my head right now, two very prominent recent examples of teams making a big commitment to quarterback and then getting out a year or two later. And that's Russell Wilson in Denver, which obviously worked out for them because they went and drafted a quarterback and hit on him in the draft. And we said this even last year. We said that if Denver could do that, they would be a competitive team. And lo and behold, they are. And then the Giants moving on from Daniel Jones already. So it has been done before that a team makes a big commitment, realizes it was a mistake, and gets out. And the pathway that you do it, if you're an NFL franchise, the pathway you can pull that off is you have to draft a good quarterback, I think, in the next draft. And the reason why this is important is because Jacksonville should have the number 1 or maybe the number 2 pick in the draft this year. So they're going to have a pick of a quarterback.
I agree. And, I think what also makes this situation a little difficult, look, we've seen other teams in similar situations, the fact that, you could look at Denver and you could say, okay, this team is kind of a quarterback away from being, a competitive team, right? I think Jacksonville is much more like beyond just being a quarterback away. I think that defense needs to be completely repaired and overhauled. I think they need a little bit of life on the offensive side of the ball. Of course, I think they need a new franchise quarterback. Like, I think that team really needs a lot. I
think there's talent on that team, though, Justin. I think you hit on something in your comment 2 comments ago, which is that he's bad for the locker room. When you're leader of your team and the guy you're paying $60 million a year to, everyone in that locker room knows they aren't the guy. They don't have it. I think that just drags the whole thing down. I look at that team. They've had a ton of draft capital the last few seasons. They have some good players. They certainly have some weapons on that offense. I mean, I think much like Denver, if you could go into the draft this year and draft a quarterback, I really feel like that team might not be so bad. There probably will be a new coach next year. This is their life raft. If you're a Jacksonville Jaguars, a downtrodden franchise, a bad franchise, this is their life raft, I think, this year.
This would be the opportunity. But you know what I would say to that too is, like, what are you going to get for Trevor Lawrence at this point, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. His market's got to be
not much
at an all-time low.
Right.
Not
much.
I really wonder what you could get back for him.
But what did Denver get for Russell Wilson? They got nothing. They cut him and they took a huge cap hit, and everyone thought they were going into a 5-year Siberia. And then what happened? They hit on Bo Nix. They built the team up around him, and here they are. They're in the playoffs probably this year.
I agree. I will just say, though, in Denver, I think you have a better overall defense, and I think you have a much better established head coach, right? Like, that was like Sean. It was. You come in with a good defense to support that offense, and that Sean Payton is going to be the building block and kind of cornerstone of that organization for years to come. Like, we don't think Doug Peterson is going to be there next year in Jacksonville, right? So you got a shaky defense. Who knows who the coach is going to be? Like, I don't know. I see so much wrong with that franchise right now. I do think you got to move on from Trevor, but I wonder I wonder if it's worth maybe trying to see if you can add a little bit more talent around him this season, and then see if you can maximize his value to move on from him in next year. I don't know.
Well, it will be interesting to see. I think it'll be interesting to see how they respond, because they are a little bit more at a crossroads with that than I think people realize.
Right.
Let's move, Justin. I want to go all the way back. It feels like ancient history now to last Thursday, to a couple of things we saw in the Thanksgiving games. If you've ever made a comment on like a famous person or big organization's Facebook page, and it ends up being like the top comment. Have you ever done that before?
It's never happened to me, but yeah. Did it happen to you?
So this is what happened with us on our page, the Dr. Football page, which I comment sometimes on stuff. And I went on Adam Schefter's page, and I basically said that, Caleb Williams is skating for the end of that game. Everyone's blaming Eberflus, fine. And Eberflus screwed up. I'm not defending him. But Caleb Williams was very much a part of the problem. He should have better presence, better game awareness than what he did. And he really blew that as much as Eberflus did. And I basically got in a fight with pretty much all of Chicago who came to Caleb Williams' defense. But here's the thing. I am going to enjoy watching all these people defend this guy to the nines the next few years, but before they just have to ultimately accept the reality that he doesn't quite have it. He's better than Trevor Lawrence to compare number one picks. I think he's a good player, but there's something lacking in there. He doesn't have that quite game presence, I think. And I really look at that last sequence there, right? Where, he takes the sack. You have to have the presence of mind to run the play. The clock is running. You don't need to throw the ball 30 yards downfield. You need to line up, throw a 7-8 yard pass, get into field goal range, and then use that last timeout. I didn't think there was anything wrong with the approach of not using that timeout in that spot. I thought Caleb Williams really was the one that didn't execute.
I agree. The more and more I watch, I was trying to come up with, a good analogy for who Caleb Williams is, because I know, he is physically gifted. He's very athletic. You see him sometimes make these crazy throws in
I don't think he's as physically gifted as people say, but that's another.
I mean,
that's another.
Look, I think
they're all physically gifted, Justin. It's the NFL. I know Josh Allen is physically gifted. Pat Mahomes is physically gifted.
Exactly.
Caleb Williams,
so I think of Caleb Williams. I think he's like Mac Jones's brain and like Patrick Mahomes' body. That's kind of how I think of Caleb Williams. That's like that's my analogy for him. Like I think the guy, like sometimes I see him, make some plays and I'm like, damn, this guy has the potential to be a good quarterback. And then other times I see him out there looking, a little bit clueless. I think his attitude is one of the biggest problems. I know he's really tried, I think, to like overexert himself as a leader. You heard all these stories in the offseason, yelling at the veterans, picking up trash, keeping the locker room clean, like all this type of stuff, not wanting to do stuff that some of the rookies do. Look, I think the guy is trying to be a leader, but I just think it comes off the wrong way. I just don't think he has that locker room presence that the team needs. I think he's a little bit emotionally unstable in certain situations, which, is never good for the leader of your team and your quarterback. And overall, I just think he's shown that like he doesn't quite have the awareness yet. I don't think he played like as daunting of a schedule at USC as some people like want to say he did. I think he's kind of getting his like welcome to the league moment right now in Chicago.
I think what happened on Thanksgiving shows, and this is not the only example of this for him this year, is that the game just moves like a little too fast for him. Like I don't think he quite has that presence, that processing that you see with say Jaden Daniels or Drake May, what we've seen, you know what I mean? Like he doesn't have that. And I feel like there have been several times this year where I watch him play and I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like he doesn't process the game as quickly as he needs to be a truly top player at this level. And it's funny, a lot of the people I was arguing with, they made the excuse of, well, he's a rookie. I'm like, well, he's a rookie. He's played 12 games and he did win a Heisman Trophy and he was like a starter in college for like 4 or 5 years. Right. So like you should be able to process a game situation and know the situation and know what's expected of you as the quarterback. And I thought he really failed at that. Let's change gears a little, Justin. Let's talk about the Friday game, the Black Friday game. Did you get to watch the Chiefs Raiders game?
I did. Yeah.
That game.
Yeah.
That was. I mean, I've never seen a team fall ass backwards into as many wins as the Kansas City Chiefs have. For the second time in like 3 or 4 weeks, a team can kick a field goal to win the game in Arrowhead Stadium in the final seconds, and somehow they blow it. This time was a penalty on the play before, but just an unbelievable run of luck. I'm trying to figure out, like I'm wrestling in my head, do we hold that against the Chiefs, or is that a compliment to them? And I mean that in terms of the postseason this year, because that's all that matters, right? It's like a team that knows how to win. I mean, that's very Patriot-like in January, but at the same time, they're not playing that well. So I don't know which way to go on this one.
So that's kind of my thinking is, I'm looking back at the, the first however many games, whatever it is, 13 games the Chiefs have played. Can you think of any real dominant wins to speak of? Like any games where they just came out there and just like blew the doors off of somebody, or really looked like the Kansas City Chiefs that you're used to seeing?
No. I think they're eking out wins, and they're winning with defense and Mahomes being just still very clutch and timely.
I agree. And so, yes, I think that is a sign of a very good team. I think obviously there is a little bit of luck involved. And I think you also create your own luck when you're, as talented and prepared and like well coached and skilled as they are. Like I truly do believe that. But I also believe that eventually, it only takes one game in the playoffs, right? And, you saw it. They went into Buffalo. They kind of got dominated a little bit, right? I think there are some teams in the AFC that can catch them. And I don't think that lucky streak is just going to continue to hold throughout the playoffs. I don't know. I think they're going to get caught. It's making me think that this team, they're on a little bit of lucky run right now, a little bit of a hot streak, but I think that's going to run out, and I don't think it's going to last in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean, look at this AFC playoff field. Denver already almost beat them in Arrowhead a few weeks ago. Pittsburgh, they're playing in a few weeks. We'll see how that goes. But Pittsburgh certainly, I think, will be able to match them the way they're playing. Yeah. Buffalo, the Texans is no joke. The Ravens have had their ups and downs, but don't tell me they couldn't beat the Chiefs. That was a close game last year in the postseason and in week 1 of this year. So they're really going to have to win at least 2, if not 3 competitive games. And all it's going to take for them to slip up here is to really lose one more game. And then they're going to Buffalo in January instead of the opposite, and having them go to Kansas City. And I think that would be a big swing.
I agree. I'm almost going to contradict myself though, because I'm looking and I'm thinking, how many teams in the AFC do you actually trust to potentially go into Arrowhead and get a win in the playoffs?
I honestly, I think this year a lot. I really do, a lot, because this is not the same Chiefs team. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. They're not the same team, but I will say it doesn't. I know you call it Patriots-like, but it doesn't. It just seems a little different to me, because I know the Patriots oftentimes found ways to win close games, but it just really seemed like this is just kind of a lucky streak, like the likes of which I haven't seen in a while, and I just feel like it's going to break sometime soon. I know they got a good defense. I know they got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, but like, I think this is the year that a team is going to catch them slipping. And you know what? It is kind of interesting too. I mean, you think about it, Patrick Mahomes has only ever lost to Tom Brady and Joe Burrow in the playoffs, right? Neither of them, well, in all likelihood, unless the Bengals do something incredible, neither of them will be there this time around, right? So this is an actual opportunity for somebody in the AFC to rise to the occasion and kind of ascend the throne and take their shot at the king, so to speak. So I'm really excited to see if somebody's able to do it. But who knows? I think this is a vulnerable year for them, though.
And just look at their last 5 games. They play 4 of the other 6 AFC playoff teams in their last 5 games. They play the Chargers in Arrowhead, the Texans in Arrowhead, at Pittsburgh, and then at Denver. So I would say that those are all losable games based on what we've seen from Kansas City so far this year. They also play at Cleveland, which I don't think is an easy game. I mean, Jameis Winston, say what you will about the guy, like he can sling it, and he might make some terrible plays, but he's going to make some great plays. And I don't think that's going to be an easy game for Kansas City either. Yeah,
totally agree.
And then just on the other side, I mean, Antonio Pierce looks in way over his head. I mean, that's very, very Gerard Mayo like what we see from Pierce.
Yeah. He looks like he's starting to, I think, visibly show signs of frustration. He's getting a little irritable, a little snappy. I think he's starting to show that there's cracks in the armor, and I think it's probably going to be his last season. I can't imagine them bringing him back next year.
Yeah. Probably. Agreed. Let's talk, Justin, about the Philadelphia Eagles and the Ravens game on Sunday. I've watched Baltimore Ravens basically steamroll teams for 13 weeks on offense. And I watched that Philadelphia team on Sunday stop Baltimore in their tracks. Yeah. They have a young, developing defense with speed, with size. That's why they're winning games. They are the number one defense in the league. It'll be the first time the Eagles, by the way, have been the number one defense in the NFL since 1991. Yeah. I heard that on SportsCenter or something this morning. But like, are you a believer now? We've both been skeptical of that Philadelphia team. Are you a believer now in the Eagles and in Nick Sirianni?
I'm a believer in the Eagles. I don't know if I'm a believer in Nick Sirianni still. I really think this team is just so freaking talented that even Nick Sirianni can't get in their way anymore. Like, I think they kind of figured it out. I mean, if you just Google a breakdown of this team's roster on both sides of the ball, right? I mean, this is one of the most talented, deep teams, arguably the most talented and deep team on paper in the NFL. And I honestly don't even think it's that close. For some reason, there was a lot of missing pieces at the beginning of the year. They just weren't clicking. They weren't playing well, but it kind of all seems to be coming together. Jalen Hurts has been really good. Saquon Barkley's arguably been the league MVP, and that defense is actually starting to play like they should, which is on paper the best defense in the NFL. So I think they're just too talented at this point. And I don't think Nick Sirianni is a bad coach. I want to clarify that. I don't think he's an awful coach. I just don't think he's a great coach or even necessarily the right coach, but I think this team is just too talented at this point to let him get in the way of that.
At 10-2, can we say now that Sirianni's a lock to be back next year?
No.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because I think if you go into the first matchup in the playoffs and you get your ass kicked, I think he's gone. I think the expectations for this team are pretty high. I don't think it's an accomplishment or a participation trophy type of season if they just do well in the regular season.
Agree, and also look at what happened last year. I mean, weren't they at a similar point, maybe a little earlier in the season last year, and then they absolutely tanked and got embarrassed in Tampa Bay in the first round of the playoffs, losing to I would say is a less talented team. So, I mean, there was 5 or 6 weeks ago. All we were saying is there's something toxic in that Philadelphia locker room. And now all of a sudden they've won a bunch of games and it's like, okay, everything's better. Everything's fixed. It's all in the past now. I'm not so convinced of that. I'm really not. Now I believe in that team. I think, yes, they are the second best team in the NFC. I will admit I was wrong to say that they weren't a few weeks ago. They clearly are. But I also feel like the potential is still there where if they started to lose a few games or maybe some of that toxicity comes back, they swirl a little bit, circle the drain and go down it. I think it's very realistic. Sirianni still isn't the coach there next year.
I agree. I think this team is, I'll put it this way. I think unless they make it to a Super Bowl, I think he's got a less than a 50% chance, if I'm being honest. Like
Super Bowl,
I think they need to make it to a Super Bowl. Like I think if they go one and done, I don't think this team brings him back. I think if he goes to the NFC Championship and loses a heartbreaker, maybe to Detroit, I think he's got a 50-50 shot. I think he needs to get them to a Super Bowl to secure, in my mind, his position next year. I don't know.
I would say he needs to win a playoff game. I don't know. I mean, I think if he wins a playoff game and they were to lose in, say, the conference championship, I think he'll be back. I mean, he has, Justin, by and large, been a successful coach. It's hard to walk away from a guy that's, winning 10 to 13 games a year.
I just think the way I look at it is I look at how talented this team is, that roster, both sides of the ball, top to bottom, and they've only gotten better each year, right, that he's been there from a talent standpoint. And I say, I think this team is too good to be that bad, right? I think they're winning in spite of Sirianni. I look at Sirianni and I say, look, this guy, I think he's on borrowed time at this point. I think, this roster is built to win a Super Bowl right now. I don't know how many chances you give him.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, I think I understand what you're saying. And if it is unorthodox as it sounds to fire a coach that's had the kind of success Sirianni has, I agree with you. It's still a realistic possibility based on what happens the next few weeks. But I do feel like if he has success of any kind in the postseason, which I would define as one win, then I think that yes, I think that they will stick with him.
Yeah. Well, and one last thing I'll say on Nick Sirianni before we move on is I don't think those problems that we heard all offseason, even the beginning of the year, even dating back to last year between him and Jalen Hurts and him and some of the other players in that locker room, I don't think that goes away overnight just because you win a couple games. So I still would be curious of that. I mean, when the going gets tough for these guys, do they clash and drive each other away, or I think if it comes down to it, you look at either Jalen Hurts or Nick Sirianni, I think that organization's sticking with Jalen Hurts. So that's something I would like to, just have everybody keep in the back of their minds is Jalen Hurts doesn't really like this guy. And I don't think that changed overnight.
I want to play a little game, Justin, here called Dead or Alive.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about a couple of teams that are teetering on the brink of becoming on the clock for the 2025 NFL draft. So I'm going to throw out a few names out there. These are teams we've talked about before. Dead or alive, Justin, the San Francisco 49ers.
Are you talking about just in terms of their chance of making the playoffs?
Yes. Is their season over effectively?
I'm going to say yes, because I think they actually lose to Chicago this weekend. So
really?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, I don't even think they need to lose to Chicago. I think if you look at 5-7, they're in last place in the NFC West. I think they're like the 11th seed right now. Christian McCaffrey is in the NFC. Christian McCaffrey's out for the rest of the year.
Yep.
Purdy isn't playing well. They already lost Ayuk. I would say you can call them dead right now. Like, I think that 49ers team is dead in the water right now.
I think they are dead, but I think it'll be confirmed after this weekend. But yeah, I agree. I think that 49ers team is struggling. We talked about it. We kind of called it. We said, look, like this team is going to kind of have a down year. I don't know how long they can keep up what they were doing. And yeah, look at it. Here we go. The collapse, the fall of San Francisco, I think, is coming.
How about the Indianapolis Colts? Dead or alive? Won a big game in Foxborough this week. They are 6-7. They currently hold the 8th seed in the AFC. They're 2 games back from Denver. 24% playoff probability, according to NFL.com. Justin, are they alive or dead, the Indianapolis Colts?
I'll say they're alive just because after in week 15, I believe, when Denver comes back from the bye, Indy and Denver meet. And if Indy's able to win that game, they're very much alive. So I think
game in Denver or in Indy?
The game is in Denver.
There's no way I can see Richardson going against that defense.
Can't see that either, but I'm not going to call them dead until that loss.
I'll call them dead. They're 2 games back in the loss column. 2 games back. Really probably should have lost in Foxborough this week. Don't believe in Richardson, the quarterback. I think the AFC playoff field is more or less set. I just don't see any way the Colts can make a run against the Broncos. But you're right. If they somehow pull off that huge upset, I guess it would change. Okay, what about the Cincinnati Bengals, Justin? Dead or alive? This one strikes close to home for you.
Yeah, it does. I'll say they're alive just because I saw statistically. I saw statistically that they mathematically they are not eliminated. And when they're as talented as this team is, I don't put it past them to be able to run the table. Is it likely? No, but I'm gonna give them a puncher's chance.
They would need some help, I think, even if they run the table. I think they would probably still need some help. So I think the Bengals are dead. Their current playoff probability, according to NFL.com analytics, is 3%. I think
is it 3%? All right, so it went down. When I saw it the other day, it was still at I think 12 or 15. So.
But that Bengals team, I mean, let's face it, they had their chances.
They did.
They had their chances to salvage their season. They lost some really close, tough games. That game against Baltimore a few weeks ago comes to mind. They just came up on the wrong side too many times, and I think right now it's too big of a mountain for them to climb.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, how about the LA Rams? They are 10th seed in the NFC, but they are 6-6. They are part of a 3-way tie, I think, or is it? Let me just look this up. A 2-way tie for second place in the NFC West. They're a game behind Seattle, who is the division leader. Are the LA Rams alive or dead?
I say alive.
Yeah.
You got McVay, you got Stafford, Puka and Cup are healthy. I think you're alive.
I agree 100%. That was a team that was decimated by injury.
Yeah.
I think what works in their favor is just the division they're in and the fact that it's still very attainable. I mean, that Seattle team has been all over the map this year. There's times they look good. There's times they look awful. I believe they still have a game in LA between the two of them. So I feel like it's very much possible that things could break the right way and they could still find themselves very much alive.
Yeah, totally agreed. And actually, I'm kind of counting on them to be in the playoffs. I think they will be when it's all said and done.
That Seattle at LA game, by the way, is the last week of the season. That's January 5th in LA. Yeah. So they're within one game. Anything's possible, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. A couple more quick things. I know we got to wrap up in a second. We don't talk enough about the Pittsburgh Steelers, Justin.
Yeah.
Don't we have to call them a Super Bowl contender if they have that kind of quarterback play statistically? Forget who's doing it. Just statistically, you're getting that kind of production from the quarterback position, and you have the best defense or one of the two best defenses in the NFL. Aren't you by definition a Super Bowl contender?
I guess you are. I've been reluctant to say it all year. I think just the stigma between Russell Wilson and just how kind of blah the Steelers have been for the last couple of years. I don't know. I guess I've been a little bit hesitant to come around on them, but at this point, you know what? It's tough to deny them. I think they're earning their spot atop the AFC. I think they're a contender.
Yes, and I have this weird feeling. And I don't know why, because I don't want this to happen, but I just have this weird feeling that they're going to the Super Bowl this year. I feel like Pittsburgh is built to win in the postseason.
Yeah.
Wilson's playing good. They match up well with a lot of the top teams in the AFC. Yeah. They've already beaten Baltimore. I just have a weird feeling that it's going to be Pittsburgh. I don't want to see them. I'm rooting for Buffalo.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Baltimore. I think Lamar Jackson deserves it more. But I just have a gut feeling with that defense.
I could see that. I could totally see that. I think they're the dark horse team in the AFC, which is funny. They shouldn't be because they have the second best record, but second or third best record. But yeah, this is a team to watch out for. I could totally see that happening, especially with the defense that they got. And what a narrative, what a storyline that would be. Russell Wilson back to the Super Bowl after everything he's been through.
Yes, and Pittsburgh would have the opportunity to be the first team to win 7 Super Bowls, which if you're a Patriots fan, you're obviously rooting against that. It's just like another, we're all rooting against the Chiefs, right? And that's going to be another team to root against in the postseason if you're a Patriots fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. I'm curious to see who they draw and how everything shakes out at the end of the season.
And I like the way they're using Justin Fields too. They're kind of doing that almost like a Cordell / Stewart type thing where he's coming in, making a couple key runs a game. I feel like he's become a weapon for them too.
Yeah, and you know what? I think Mike Tomlin, again, he's just one of the most, steady coaches in the NFL. Yep. The guy just always produces, and I think he's a great locker room coach, a great players coach, and he just he's always getting the best out of his players in that team.
No question about it, Justin. Okay, so week 14 this Sunday. I don't know if you've looked at the roster of games Sunday. I can tell you right now, the Patriots off and the garbage games that are on. I actually made plans to go do some other things for a rare thing for me on a football Sunday to just be you know what? I don't know if there's one game being played, certainly in the 1 o'clock window, that I care about. I mean, Browns Steelers a little bit, Saints Giants a dog, Jets Dolphins a dog, Jaguars Titans a dog, Falcons Vikings okay, Panthers Eagles is a dog, Raiders Buccaneers is a dog. Those are your 1 o'clocks. Your 4 o'clocks, Seahawks Cardinals, Bears 49ers. Those are terrible games. The Bills Rams, that's okay. The night games are okay next week, but it's between bye weeks and I don't know, bad luck. It's hard to remember a worse NFL schedule for any given Sunday that I can ever remember.
Yeah, it's not a great slate of games. I will say the saving grace is that for a lot of people, myself included, it is the last week for the regular season of fantasy football. I got two big people. Yeah, for a lot of people.
Us too.
Yes, us too. I'm in 3 leagues, clinched the playoffs in 1. I have to win in both of my other leagues to secure a spot in the playoffs. So that's keeping it exciting. That's keeping it entertaining. That's about the only saving grace, because I agree the games are kind of blah and everyone's on bye. Like that's the toughest part. Like I was you look at some of the teams and players on bye. I mean, you're missing a really exciting chunk of the NFL this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me, for my fantasy team, not to regale people with tales of my fantasy team, because most people don't give a shit, but I'm gonna, just very quickly, I am in first place and I'm getting a bye week. And I've done it on the back of Lamar Jackson and Joe Mixon, who both have bye weeks this week.
Yeah.
So it is great feeling to be able to just put my feet up, and it doesn't matter if I win or lose. I'm clinched.
Nice.
My two best players are getting a week of rest, and I don't need to worry. It could not have worked out better for me. So hopefully things will continue to break right for my fantasy team.
Exactly. So yeah, good luck to everybody out there who's fighting for the playoffs. It's gonna that will at least keep this dull week exciting, hopefully.
Totally. That is about all that can do it, because it is truly garbage. Okay, man. Well, listen, that's all the time we have. I'm going to wrap it up. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm still going to watch it. I'll still be on my phone wherever I am looking at it, but just, it's not exactly appointment viewing. That Giants Saints game isn't exactly appointment viewing.
No, not at all. But I got Malik Neighbors. I got Alvin Kamara. So I'll be watching. That's what keeps us entertained, right?
That's what keeps you entertained.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, we want to thank everyone that listened to this edition of the Around the League, Dr. Football Ultimate Patriots podcast. Have a great week. Enjoy the games. Enjoy the holiday season, whatever you do. And we will catch you next Tuesday with another episode of the Patriots podcast.